All right, let's jump into this. Make rocket ship go now. Hello, I am Robert Ogilvy, executive strategist and EQ coach. Glad you guys could join me. Um, I think the first part cut off. I'll just do it again. Make rocket ship go now. Hi, I'm Robert Ogilvy, executive strategist and EQ coach. Glad you guys could join me. Um, this isn't a full 10-minute live training video. It's a feedback video. I love your input on what topics you do like, what topics you don't like, and what things could help you best. So obviously, you know that I'm often dealing with issues around strategy. I'm dealing with how we develop executive talent, leadership talent, about how we're tackling big complex systems and problems, about systematic ways to deal with assessment data and actually track development over time, which is why I'm into EQ, which is why I'm into some pretty advanced cognitive psychometrics. You know that I'm really into motivation, which is very much, you know, what's keeping you interested in something, what's driving you, what level of needs you have, which is helping inform, you know, what balance, what health and well-being, and getting all the pieces lined up in that perfect context, what that looks like for you. But really, this could be in any realm. So I just want to open up to the floor, and you know, it could be right now in the live cast, but I'm assuming you know there's going to be people watching this afterwards. So please, whenever you are watching this now or later, I'd love your feedback. What topics interest you? What topics do you not really want to hear from again? And is there a particular um, tool or technique or particular data point which could really help you solve your problems? I would love your feedback. I would love to hear that. Um, something else I'll tell you, future facing we'll get into. So you guys know that in terms of there's a bunch of different psychometrics I use, but the two top end ones, one is a cognitive assessment that deals with basically the depth of complexity of how much you can understand these big problems and communicate in a Buchan environment. But most of them are actually from 6 seconds, which are basically the masters of EQ, right? They've done this stuff the longest, they have the best assessment tools, and they have the best variety of assessment tools, the most well validated, the most norms in terms of like how they're changing year by year and region by region, and they come up with the best new tools. Um, and so one tidbit is that in the next probably by the end of the year, there's a training we'll finish with them, which will actually allow me to do a small summary report, which just it summarizes the knowing yourself, the self-awareness, the choosing yourself, which are the tactical day-to-day uses of EQ, and the giving yourself. It can generate the three summary scores actually quite easily. So that's actually something by the end of the year that I'll have a good little opt-in magnet you can get for that. Um, the reason why I'm interested in this stuff is that the maybe to recap this side of it, you want some balance between very kind of low level skills, which you can train someone in, but they don't generalize and they don't fundamentally change how you operate, and traits, which you know might inform what you're about, but if they're trait proper, they can't really change. So in the middle, what we find are emotional intelligence competencies, which become these kind of habits we have, however you know, good or bad around how we're noticing our emotions and how well we're managing them and how well we can sense and respond well to others and all this tactical stuff. But there's lots of other things that can change. One I'll share with you is that so when I compared my strength assessment 4 years ago with my strength assessment now in the past month or so, right? Most of the top five was pretty similar, but the priority had shifted. Now kindness was right at the top. It used to be that creativity was at the top, which is great. I've become an even more big-hearted guy, and also a little bit less judgy. So judgment was so I always have top three wisdom skills in my top five strengths, but judgment got dropped off and perspective came in. So, you know, what's judgment? It's good kind of discernment and analysis, but it also comes with a certain kind of heaviness and finality, a certain parsimoniousness. And now perspective has become my number one, my number five slot, my third wisdom one, which is around counseling and helping and guiding others, which is what you'd want for a coach because it's not about me and my opinions, it's about you and bringing out your best and how to develop your skills, right? But this is just an example of how you need to bring all these things together. You need to have an awareness of your strengths, an awareness of your EQ, an awareness of how well you're operating on your environment. And we'll continue to bring more tools together for that. But again, I'd like your feedback on what sort of topics interest you guys, because I don't want to bother making content no one gives a hoot about. I think there's far too much of that. So please drop me a comment. Give me some details about the kind of problems you're working on and things you're thinking about. Um, Even if you want, I guess one step back from this is if you ever want me to kind of, discern and kind of bust apart some idea you're thinking and you want to, it's like, is this accurate or not? Is this useful or not? I'd love your input. Um, and I say this too because particularly in there's all sorts of coaches of various qualities. It's quite the bell curve, let's say that. And I want to see what other people are up to. And management consulting is even worse because these are people generally with more experience, but they might even be more kind of ideologically into a certain method or another. And sometimes it's great, and sometimes it's just out to lunch and so myopic that they don't even know they're out to lunch, right? And so I'm always interested in that end of things. I think actually Chris Lowe and Ruth Wagerman, so these would be the two main people behind the six team conditions and the TDS report and things like that. They both come from strong academic backgrounds, right? Ruth actually did a bunch of research, I think it was at Harvard. Christer's at another university, but he's basically a prof that's becoming this kind of full-time team consultant, right? And so they similarly have a very similar shrewdness to it's like, what are good and bad tools? What are good and bad models, right? And you might be, a practitioner, you might be a pragmatist, but there's nothing as useful as a good theory, as a good model. That's actually, I think, a Kurt Lewin quote, right? So he's the big experiential learning guy, right? Nothing is useful as a good theory, right? Which reminds me then of another quote from a British mathematician, and it's like, I'll see if I can get this right. Um, all models are wrong. Some models are useful, right? When we're dealing with mental model structures, ways to approach something, it's it's inaccurate to be like it's unuseful to be like, is this accurate data or not, right? Because it's really a lens. It's not really a data set. It's a way of structuring and kind of orienting things to look at it, right? So the question is not, is it accurate? It's like, is it useful? Or you could break that into component questions. Is it sufficiently complex but not excessively complex? Does it cover the data points needed? Does it understand the flows and relationships so that as you modify particular areas, you could see how this changes? Which is in some sense to say, like, is it sensitive enough to the real root causes and forces in play, efficient forces in play, that it understands why the system flows like it does? Um, but anyway, there's lots of amazing topics I could riff on. One I want to get more into, I think you've heard this in some videos, but I want to get more into flow. I want to help you guys basically find flow in your own work because I honestly think this is like the modern day, I mean, yes, modern day depression, but it's like the modern day workplace malaise is that either you're really not motivated, interested in your work, or you're doing work which is so self-directed, but on such small scale and maybe low impactful terms that it's really not that energizing, right? Or certainly not useful to anyone else yet. And it takes a lot of forces to come together to blend all these, right? And so I think that's really what we're going after. And this would be part of the shift that, when Csikszentmihalyi in about 1990s laying out these ideas around flow, initially the tone was very much about autopoiesis, which is just a fancy way to say it's like it's individually self-motivating, but it's also solipsistic in that way, right? It's you and your own little absorption doing your thing, right? And then, even by a few years later, when he's getting into his book on creativity and he's dealing more with context, he's dealing already more with sympapoiesis, which is that the flow state is about you interacting well with your environment. The cool thing is we're now, me and Dr. Sedimir, I can't even pronounce his last name. It's not Ignatieff. It's something much more convoluted and beautiful. But we're starting to actually write a book on flow. The proper term here would be vital engagement, and it's dealing with that. It's how interested are you, how engaged are you, kind of personally and subjectively in what you're doing. How much is that connected to that environment? And there's a bunch of other forces that come together. So this is a driving force in my life. I remember back when I was doing my second undergrad degree, and people are asking me, Bobby, what career do you want? What about this or that, or what psychology topics? And one friend was like, Bobby, like flow. I'm not sure if you realize this, but like whenever you talk about flow, your eyes light up and you love it and you talk about it the most. And I've seen you do it in at least I think two different seminar classes now. So if you do something with flow in the future, I think that would be really good for you. So you know what? Like, I agree. I'd love to do something with flow in the future. And please tell me what is interesting to you guys. Anyway, that's it. I can't wait for your feedback. Super interesting. Robert Ogilvy, executive strategist and EQ coach. I will talk to you guys soon.